The rain hammered against the glass ceiling of Riverside Mall that Tuesday evening, creating a steady rhythm that most people ignored as they hurried past the food court. But Maya heard it. She always heard music in everything, even in the chaos of this busy shopping center where she spent her evenings playing piano for shoppers who barely looked up from their phones. Her fingers moved across the keys almost automatically now, playing the same rotation of soft jazz and classical pieces she'd been performing for the past 8 months. This was her third job of the day. She'd already finished a morning shift at the diner on 5th Street and spent her afternoon cleaning offices downtown. By the time she sat down at this piano each evening, her back ached and her eyes burned with exhaustion. But she needed every dollar. Her son Daniel was only 6 years old, and raising him alone meant there was never enough money no matter how hard she worked. Maya glanced at the clock above the Chinese food stall. 7:30. Another hour and a half before she could go home, heat up whatever leftovers she'd brought from the diner and maybe catch a few hours of sleep before starting all over again tomorrow. She transitioned into a gentle version of a popular movie theme, her mind wandering to the stack of bills waiting on her kitchen counter, the eviction notice, Daniel's upcoming doctor appointment that she couldn't afford to miss but also couldn't afford to attend. That's when she heard the sound. It cut through the ambient noise of the food court like a knife. A child's cry, sharp and terrified. Maya's hand stuttered on the keys as she turned toward the sound. About 20 feet away, near the pretzel stand, a little girl had collapsed onto the floor. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, dressed in a beautiful navy blue coat that probably cost more than Maya made in a month. The girl was gasping for air, her small hands clutching at her chest, tears streaming down her face. People had stopped walking. A small crowd was forming. Everyone staring but nobody moving. Maya recognized that look. It was the same frozen uncertainty she'd seen 100 times before. People wanting to help but not knowing how. Afraid of making things worse. Afraid of getting involved. The girl's breathing was getting more rapid, more shallow. She was having a panic attack. Maya knew because Daniel had them sometimes, especially after his father left. Those terrible nights when her little boy would wake up screaming, unable to breathe, convinced something awful was about to happen. Maya didn't think. She just moved. She stood up from the piano bench so quickly it scraped against the floor. Her tired legs carried her across the food court, past the confused onlookers, straight to the little girl. Maya knelt down on the cold tile floor, not caring that she was getting her only good work pants dirty. "Hey, sweetie," Maya said softly, keeping her voice calm and steady. "Can you hear me?" The girl's eyes were wild with fear, darting around without focusing on anything. She was somewhere far away in her mind, trapped in whatever terrible thing she was experiencing. Maya had seen this exact look in Daniel's eyes. "I know you're scared right now," Maya continued, still using that same gentle tone. "But you're safe. I promise you're safe." The girl didn't respond, her breathing still coming in short, desperate gasps. Someone in the crowd said they'd called security. Another person suggested calling an ambulance. Maya blocked them all out. She knew what this child needed, and it wasn't a crowd of strangers making everything more overwhelming. Maya did something that might have seemed strange to the people watching. She started humming. It was the same simple melody she hummed to Daniel during his worst nights. A tune she'd made up years ago, something soft and repetitive and soothing. She hummed it while maintaining eye contact with the girl, letting the sound wrap around them both. Then Maya stood up and walked back to the piano. She could hear people murmuring, probably thinking she was giving up, walking away from a child in crisis. But Maya sat down at the bench and immediately began playing the melody she'd been humming. Her fingers found the notes instinctively, muscle memory taking over. She played it once through, then again, adding gentle variations each time. The sound filled the food court, cutting through the noise and the tension. Maya kept her eyes on the little girl as she played. She watched as the child's frantic breathing began to slow, just slightly. The girl's eyes found Maya, found the piano, found the source of the sound. Maya nodded at her encouragingly and kept playing, adding a soft vocal harmony to the instrumental melody. The song had no words, just gentle humming that rose and fell like waves. Maya poured everything into it. All the nights she'd spent comforting Daniel, all the fear she'd felt as a mother watching her child suffer, all the love she had for her son transformed into music that floated across the food court. The girl's shoulders began to relax. Her breathing steadied, becoming deeper and more regular. She was still crying, but the panic was leaving her eyes, replaced by something calmer, something almost peaceful. Maya transitioned the melody, making it even softer, even more gentle. She watched as the little girl slowly pulled herself up from the floor and took one tentative step toward the piano, then another. The crowd parted silently as the child walked across the food court, drawn to the music like it was a lifeline pulling her to safety. When the girl reached the piano, Maya smiled at her and kept playing. The child stood there for a moment, then carefully climbed onto the bench beside Maya. She didn't say anything. She just sat there watching Maya's hands move across the keys, her breathing now completely normal. Maya played for another few minutes, gradually bringing the song to a gentle close. When the last note faded, the food court was silent, except for the rain still drumming on the glass ceiling above them. "Better?" Maya asked quietly. The girl nodded, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "My mom used to play piano," she whispered. "Before she died." Maya's heart cracked open. She knew that kind of loss, even if she'd experienced it differently. She knew what it felt like when the world took something precious away and left you gasping for air. "She had good taste," Maya said gently. "Music is magic, isn't it? It can take us to the people we miss, even when they're far away." The girl nodded again and leaned slightly against Maya's shoulder. They sat there together in comfortable silence while the crowd slowly dispersed, everyone going back to their shopping and their meals and their own lives. What Maya didn't know was that someone had been watching the entire scene unfold. A tall man in an expensive charcoal suit had been standing near the electronics store entrance, frozen in place, his phone pressed against his ear. He'd been in the middle of an important call when he'd spotted his daughter collapse in the food court. He'd started running toward her, his heart in his throat. But then he'd seen the woman at the piano. Alexander Chen stood perfectly still and watched this stranger save his daughter in a way he'd been unable to do for 2 years. He watched her walk away from her job to help a child she didn't know. He watched her create something beautiful out of a moment of crisis. And as his daughter's breathing steadied and she walked toward that piano, Alexander felt tears streaming down his own face. He'd spent millions on therapists and specialists and medications. He'd moved mountains trying to help his little girl heal from losing her mother. But nothing had worked like this. Nothing had reached her like this simple melody played by a tired woman in a shopping mall food court. Alexander ended his phone call without saying goodbye. His assistant could handle whatever it was. None of it mattered. He stood there in the shadows of the electronics store and watched his daughter sit beside the pianist. Watched her find a moment of peace for the first time in months, and he knew, standing there with tears on his face and his heart breaking open with gratitude, that he'd just witnessed something extraordinary. He didn't know who this woman was yet, but he was going to find out. Alexander waited until his daughter seemed completely calm before he approached the piano. His legs felt weak as he crossed the food court, still processing what he'd just witnessed. For 2 years he'd watched his little girl suffer. 2 years of panic attacks and sleepless nights and therapists who meant well but couldn't quite reach her. And this stranger, this woman playing piano in a shopping mall, had done in 10 minutes what an army of expensive specialists couldn't do in months. Maya felt someone approaching and looked up to see a man in what was clearly a very expensive suit. Everything about him screamed money, from his perfectly styled hair to his Italian leather shoes. She'd seen enough wealthy people in her life to recognize the type. Usually they didn't notice people like her at all. "Thank you," he said, and his voice cracked on those 2 simple words. "Thank you so much. I don't even know how to express what you just did for my daughter." Maya glanced at the little girl still sitting beside her on the piano bench. She could see the resemblance now. They had the same dark eyes, the same delicate features. She just needed someone to help her breathe, Maya said simply. "I'm glad I could help." Alexander knelt down so he was eye level with his daughter. "Lily, sweetheart, are you okay now?" The girl nodded, then looked at Maya. "Can you play the song again?" Maya smiled and played a shortened version of the melody, watching as Lily's face relaxed into something peaceful. When she finished, Alexander stood up, and Maya noticed his eyes were still red from crying. Rich or not, this was a father who loved his daughter desperately. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. "That technique, I mean." "The music therapy approach," Maya shrugged, standing up from the bench. "I didn't learn it anywhere official. My son Daniel gets anxious sometimes too. Music helps him. I figured it might help your daughter." "You have a son?" He's 6. Home with my neighbor right now. Maya checked the time on the dusty clock above the noodle shop. Actually, I need to finish my shift. I'm glad your daughter is feeling better. She started to turn back to the piano, but Alexander gently touched her arm. Wait, please. I need to know your name. I need some way to thank you properly. Maya hesitated. Something about this man made her uncomfortable, though not in a dangerous way. More like he existed in a completely different world than she did, and she wasn't sure how to navigate the space between them. It's Maya. Maya Chen. But you don't need to thank me, really. I'm just glad she's okay. Maya, Alexander repeated, like he was memorizing it. I'm Alexander. This is my daughter Lily. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Please, if you ever need anything at all. Maya took the card more out of politeness than genuine interest. She glanced at it quickly. Alexander Chen, Chief Executive Officer, Chen Industries. Her stomach dropped a little. She'd heard of Chen Industries. Everyone had. They owned half the city's real estate and had offices around the world. This wasn't just a wealthy man. This was one of the wealthiest men in the entire state. That's really not necessary, Maya said, trying to hand the card back. I was just doing what anyone would do. No, Alexander said firmly. Most people stood and watched. You acted. Please, keep the card. And if it's not too much to ask, could I give you my phone number? Lily has these episodes sometimes, and if music helps her this much, maybe I could call you for advice. Maya wanted to say no. Every instinct told her that getting involved with someone like Alexander Chen was a terrible idea. Their worlds didn't mix. But then she looked at Lily, still sitting at the piano bench, gently pressing a few keys and listening to the notes. She thought about Daniel and how desperate she felt during his worst moments. How she'd give anything for help, for guidance, for just someone who understood. Okay, Maya said quietly. She pulled out her old phone, the screen cracked and held together with tape. Alexander didn't even blink at it. He just carefully entered his number into her contacts and then called himself so he'd have her number too. Thank you, he said again. Truly. You have no idea what this means to me. Maya nodded and watched as Alexander gently guided Lily away from the piano. The little girl waved goodbye, and Maya waved back before sitting down to finish her shift. Her hands were shaking slightly as she started playing again. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the adrenaline from the crisis. Maybe it was something else. What Maya didn't know was that as soon as Alexander got Lily into his car, he immediately called his personal assistant. I need you to find out everything you can about someone, he said, pulling out of the parking structure. Her name is Maya Chen. She works playing piano at Riverside Mall. His assistant, trained to never question unusual requests, simply said, I'll have a report to you by morning. And be discreet, Alexander added, glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror. She was already falling asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the panic attack. I just want to know how I can help her. She did something incredible for us tonight. The report arrived at 6 a.m, and Alexander read it over coffee in his home office before Lily woke up. What he found made his chest tighten with a mixture of admiration and heartbreak. Maya Chen, age 29. Single mother. Working 3 jobs to support her son Daniel, age 6. Behind on rent by 3 months with an eviction notice filed 2 weeks ago. Her son needed surgery for a recurring medical condition, but she'd been putting it off because she couldn't afford it even with the payment plan the hospital offered. Her car had broken down last month, so she took 2 buses to get to each of her jobs. She'd dropped out of a prestigious music program in college when she got pregnant because she couldn't afford tuition and childcare. The report was full of facts and figures, but what struck Alexander most was the section on her character. His assistant had interviewed her employers and neighbors. Every single person said the same things. Maya was kind. She helped people whenever she could. Even when she had nothing to give, she never complained. She worked harder than anyone they'd ever met. Her son was polite and well cared for despite their financial struggles. She sometimes skipped meals to make sure Daniel ate enough. Alexander set the report down and stared out the window at his perfectly manicured garden. He lived in a 15,000 square foot house. He had cars he'd never driven and art he'd never really looked at. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. And this woman who'd saved his daughter was about to be homeless. He thought about his late wife, Catherine. What would she say if she were here? He knew exactly what she'd say. She'd tell him to help. She'd tell him that money was only valuable when it was used to make a real difference in people's lives. Catherine had always said that wealth came with responsibility, but Alexander had learned over the years that helping people was complicated. Pride got in the way. People didn't want charity, especially from strangers. He needed to be careful about this. If he just showed up and threw money at Maya, she'd probably refuse it. He could tell from their brief conversation that she wasn't the type to accept handouts. He spent the entire day thinking about it. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, he finally made a decision. He sat down at his desk and wrote a simple note by hand. Then he wrote a check for $50,000. It was enough to solve Maya's immediate problems without being so much that it seemed crazy. He sealed everything in an envelope with no return address. The next morning, he drove to Maya's apartment building himself. It was in one of the rougher parts of the city, the kind of place where the elevator never worked and the hallway smelled like mildew and old cooking. He found her apartment number and quietly slipped the envelope under the door. As he walked back to his car, Alexander felt lighter than he had in months. He wasn't naive enough to think that money solved everything, but it could solve some things. It could buy time and breathing room and hope. And maybe that woman who'd given his daughter a moment of peace could have some peace of her own. He didn't expect anything in return. He didn't even expect to see Maya again. He just wanted to help the way she'd helped him. But Alexander Chen had no idea that this simple act of gratitude was about to change both of their lives forever. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest ripples. Sometimes a moment of kindness between strangers becomes the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. And sometimes, the universe has a way of bringing people together who were always meant to find each other. Maya had just finished her morning shift at the diner when she got home and found the envelope under her door. At first, she thought it was another bill or maybe another notice from the landlord. Her hands were shaking as she picked it up, already dreading what was inside. But when she opened it, everything stopped. The note, the check. $50,000. Maya's legs gave out and she sat down hard on the floor right there in her doorway. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She read the note 3 times, her eyes blurring with tears. For the angel who saved my daughter, please accept this gift to help your family. No name, no signature, nothing to indicate who had left it. Her first thought was that it was a mistake. Someone had put it under the wrong door. Her second thought was that it might be some kind of scam. She'd heard stories about fake checks and con artists who targeted desperate people. Maya sat on her floor for 20 minutes just staring at the check, afraid to believe it was real. Finally, she called the bank. Her voice was shaking so badly the representative had to ask her to repeat the account number twice. Then came the wait, the longest 3 minutes of Maya's life while they verified the check. "Ma'am, this check is legitimate and the account has sufficient funds to cover it," the representative said. "Would you like to set up an appointment to deposit it?" Maya couldn't speak. She just nodded, then realized the person on the phone couldn't see her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, please." She deposited the check that afternoon, still half convinced it would bounce. But it didn't. The money appeared in her account the next business day, and Maya spent an hour sitting in her car in the bank parking lot, crying so hard she couldn't see. The first thing she did was schedule Daniel's surgery. She'd been putting it off for 8 months, watching her little boy struggle and telling herself they'd find a way eventually. Now they had a way. The surgery was scheduled for the following month, and when Maya told Daniel, he hugged her so tight she thought her ribs might crack. Next, she paid every single bill that had been crushing her. The rent, the electric bill that had a shut-off notice attached, the medical bills from Daniel's previous treatments. She even got her car fixed so she didn't have to take those 2 buses anymore. For the first time in 6 years, Maya went to bed without that constant knot of panic in her stomach. The panic that whispered she was one disaster away from losing everything. She tried to figure out who had left the money. It had to be Alexander. Who else could it be? But something stopped her from calling him to ask. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear that if she acknowledged it, he'd want something in return. Or maybe she just wanted to hold on to this gift without complicating it with questions and gratitude and debt. 3 weeks after the envelope appeared, Maya was at the mall for her evening shift when she saw them, Alexander and Lily sitting at one of the food court tables. Lily noticed her first and immediately broke into a huge smile, waving enthusiastically. Maya waved back and started her shift, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach. She played her usual rotation of songs but kept glancing over at their table. Alexander was working on a laptop while Lily drew in a sketchbook, and every so often they'd look up when Maya started a new song. About halfway through her shift, Lily walked over to the piano. "Can you play the calming song?" she asked quietly. "Of course, sweetheart." Maya transitioned into the melody she'd played that first night and watched as Lily's whole body relaxed. The little girl stood beside the piano listening with her eyes closed. When the song ended, Lily opened her eyes. "I haven't had a bad episode in 3 weeks," she said proudly. "Daddy says it's because I think about your music when I start to feel scared." Maya's throat tightened. "That's wonderful, Lily. I'm so proud of you. Will you play it again?" Maya played the song 3 more times that evening, and each time Lily stood there listening like it was the most important thing in the world. Alexander stayed at the table, watching them both with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. It wasn't until her shift ended that he approached. "She's been asking to come here every day," Alexander said, his hands in his pockets. "I hope that's okay. We don't want to bother you while you're working." "It's not a bother at all," Maya said honestly. "She's a sweet kid. You're raising her well." "I'm trying." Alexander looked tired, and for a moment Maya saw past the expensive suit and the perfect haircut. She saw a single parent doing his best, just like her. The music really does help her. "I wanted you to know that what you did that night, it wasn't just a moment. It changed something for her." Maya wanted to ask about the money. The words were right there on her tongue. But before she could speak, Lily came running back over. "Daddy, can Maya come have ice cream with us?" "Oh, sweetie, I'm sure Maya is tired and needs to get home," Alexander said quickly, giving Maya an apologetic look. But Maya surprised herself. "Actually, ice cream sounds nice." They went to the ice cream shop 2 doors down from the food court. Lily got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles and talked nonstop about her art class and her favorite books. Maya got vanilla, the cheapest option, out of habit even though she could technically afford more now. Alexander got nothing, just sat and watched his daughter with so much love in his eyes that Maya had to look away. "Daniel would love her," Maya said, gesturing to Lily. "My son, he's around your age, isn't he?" "I'm 8 3/4, Lily said seriously. "Daniel just turned 6. He loves drawing too. Can I meet him?" Maya glanced at Alexander, not sure how to navigate this. But he just smiled. "If your mom says it's okay, maybe we could arrange a play date sometime. If that's not too weird." "It's not weird," Maya said, though part of her wondered if it was. Rich kids and poor kids didn't usually mix. But Lily seemed lonely, and Daniel could use a friend too. "Actually, that would be really nice." They exchanged numbers again, this time with the explicit purpose of setting up time for the kids to meet. As Maya drove home that night, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Something that might have been happiness, or maybe just hope. She wasn't sure there was a difference. The play date happened the following Saturday at a park halfway between their neighborhoods. Maya was nervous about Alexander seeing where she lived, so she'd suggested neutral ground. She arrived early with Daniel, who was excited but trying to hide it. When Alexander's sleek black car pulled up, Daniel's eyes went wide. "Whoa," he whispered. "That's the nicest car I've ever seen." "Don't be weird about it," Maya whispered back. "They're just people." But watching Alexander and Lily get out of that car, both of them dressed in clothes that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent used to be, she felt the gap between their worlds more acutely than ever. This was a mistake. These people lived in a completely different universe. Then Lily saw Daniel and ran over with a huge smile. "Hi, I'm Lily. Do you like drawing? I brought my markers. We can share." And just like that, the 2 kids were running off toward the playground equipment, leaving Maya and Alexander standing awkwardly by the parking lot. "Your son seems great," Alexander said. "So does your daughter." They stood in silence for a moment. Then both started talking at once. "Did you—" "I wanted to—" They both stopped. Alexander gestured for Maya to go first. "Thank you," Maya said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the money. I know it was you. It had to be you. And I don't have words for what that gift meant to my family. You saved us." Alexander's expression softened. "You saved my daughter first. I just wanted to help. You seemed like you could use a break." "A break," Maya repeated, and then she laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "That money changed everything. Daniel's surgery is scheduled. We're not getting evicted. I can breathe for the first time in years." "Good," Alexander said simply. That's all I wanted. They watched their kids play together, running and laughing like they'd been friends forever. And somewhere in that afternoon, something shifted. The awkwardness faded. They started talking, really talking, about their kids, about being single parents, about the weird loneliness of raising a child alone, even when you love them more than anything. Alexander told her about his wife, Catherine, how she'd died in a car accident 2 years ago, how he'd been barely functioning ever since. Maya told him about Daniel's father, who'd left when she got pregnant and never looked back. They were different stories, but the pain underneath was similar. The weight of doing everything alone. The fear of not being enough. You're more than enough, Alexander said when Maya admitted her deepest worry. Anyone who looks at your son can see that. He's happy and kind and confident. You did that. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time someone had told her she was doing a good job? When was the last time someone had seen her, really seen her, and said she was enough? The afternoon stretched into evening, and neither of them wanted it to end. The weeks that followed felt almost dreamlike to Maya. She and Alexander started meeting at the park every Saturday with the kids. Daniel and Lily became inseparable, their friendship one of those rare instant connections that made Maya's heart swell every time she watched them together. Lily helped Daniel with his drawing, and Daniel made Lily laugh in ways Alexander said he hadn't heard since before his wife died. But Maya kept Alexander at a distance. She was friendly but careful. She'd catch him looking at her sometimes with an expression she couldn't quite read, and it made her nervous. Men like Alexander didn't really see women like her, not as equals anyway. The money he'd given her, as generous as it was, created an invisible wall between them. She was grateful, but gratitude and friendship were complicated to balance. Then everything changed on a random Tuesday morning. Maya was at the mall early, talking to her manager before her shift, when he called her into his small office. Her stomach dropped immediately. Nothing good ever came from being called into an office. Maya, I need to talk to you about your position, he said, not meeting her eyes. Did I do something wrong? No, nothing like that. You're great. It's just corporate is making cuts. They're eliminating the live piano player position at all their locations. Budget reasons. I'm really sorry. The words hit Maya like cold water. When? End of the week. You'll get your final paycheck then. Maya walked out of that office in a daze. This job wasn't much, but it was steady. It was the job that let her be creative, that fed her soul even while it helped pay her bills. And more than that, losing one of her 3 jobs meant she'd be right back where she started. The money Alexander had given her was helping, but it wouldn't last forever. She still needed income. She still needed to work. She drove home and spent the afternoon sending out applications to every restaurant, store, and business she could find. Most places weren't hiring. The ones that were paid even less than the mall job had. By evening, Maya felt the old panic creeping back in. That familiar feeling of drowning, of working as hard as she could and still losing ground. She didn't tell Alexander. What would be the point? He'd probably offer her more money, and she couldn't accept that. She'd already taken so much from him. Her pride, the small amount she had left, wouldn't let her become someone who just took handouts from a wealthy man who felt sorry for her. But Alexander found out anyway. 3 days after Maya lost her job, her phone rang from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, thinking it was a spam call, but something made her pick up. Hello, is this Maya Chen? A professional woman's voice, yes? This is Rebecca from the Chen Foundation. We'd like to invite you for an interview regarding a position that recently became available. Are you familiar with our organization? Maya's heart started racing. Chen Foundation, as in Alexander's foundation. I've heard of it. Wonderful. We're looking for someone to coordinate our community music outreach program. The position involves teaching piano to underprivileged children and developing music therapy programs for youth dealing with trauma and anxiety. Your name came highly recommended. Maya's mind was spinning. Who recommended me? There was a pause. I'm not at liberty to say, but your experience and skill set match what we're looking for perfectly. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow at 10? Maya should have said no. Every instinct told her this was Alexander's doing. But she heard herself say, yes, I'll be there. She spent the entire evening alternating between excitement and anger. This had to be Alexander. He'd found out she lost her job and created a position for her out of pity. But then again, what if it was real? What if this was an actual opportunity and she was being paranoid? The Chen Foundation offices were in one of the nicest buildings downtown, all glass and marble and artwork that probably cost more than Maya's car. She felt completely out of place in her best dress, which was 5 years old and slightly too tight. The interview went well, almost too well. Rebecca asked her about her experience with music, with children, with helping people through difficult situations. Maya talked about Daniel, about Lily, about the nights she'd spent learning how to calm her son's anxiety through sound and rhythm. She talked about music like it was the most important language in the world, because to her it was. The position pays $65,000 a year plus benefits, Rebecca said at the end. We'd need you to start in 2 weeks. Maya's breath caught. $65,000. That was more than all 3 of her jobs combined. That was enough to not just survive, but actually live. To have weekends off. To be home when Daniel got out of school. There's just one thing, Maya said, her voice shaking slightly. I need to know if this position was created specifically for me. Rebecca's professional smile flickered for just a second. The Chen Foundation is always expanding its programs to serve the community. This position has been under development for several months. It wasn't really an answer, and they both knew it. But Maya was tired. She was so tired of struggling and fighting and barely surviving. And maybe, just maybe, this opportunity was something she'd earned. Not because of Alexander's money or guilt, but because she was actually good at helping people through music. I'd love to accept the position, Maya said. She started 2 weeks later. And for the first week, she barely saw Alexander. He was traveling for business, Rebecca explained. But the work itself was incredible. Maya developed programs for kids in low-income neighborhoods, teaching them piano basics and using music to help them express emotions they didn't have words for. She worked with children who'd experienced trauma, who had anxiety and depression and PTSD. She watched music open them up in ways nothing else could. And she was good at it, really good at it. The foundation's directors praised her creativity and compassion. Parents sent thank you notes. Kids started showing up early to her sessions and staying late. Maya felt for the first time in her adult life like she was doing exactly what she was meant to do. But the question nagged at her. Had she earned this? Or was she here because a rich man felt sorry for her? When Alexander finally returned from his trip, he showed up at the foundation on a Friday afternoon. Maya was in the middle of a session with a group of kids when she looked up and saw him watching from the doorway. Her hands faltered on the keys for just a moment before she recovered. After the session ended and the kids filed out, Alexander walked in. He looked different somehow, more tired, more uncertain. You're really good at this, he said quietly. Did you create this job for me? Maya asked directly, not bothering with small talk. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yes. The foundation had been discussing music therapy programs for a while, but I pushed it forward. I pushed it forward because I saw what you did with Lily, and I thought you could help other kids the same way. Was that wrong? Maya felt anger flash through her. You should have asked me first. You should have told me the truth. If I'd told you, would you have taken the job? No, Maya admitted. I would have thought it was charity. Is it charity if you're genuinely the best person for the position? Alexander asked. Maya, I watched you work today. Those kids adore you. You're changing their lives. Yes, I opened the door. But you're the one walking through it. You're the one doing the actual work. That's not the point, Maya said, her voice rising. The point is you made decisions about my life without talking to me. You're trying to fix me like I'm some kind of project. That's not what this is, Alexander said, and now his voice was rising too. Do you think I'm doing this because I pity you? Because I feel sorry for the poor single mom? Aren't you? No, he said. And the intensity in his voice made Maya take a step back. I'm doing this because I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you since the night you saved my daughter. Since you showed me what real compassion looks like. Since you taught me that kindness doesn't come from bank accounts, it comes from hearts. The room went completely silent. Maya couldn't breathe. She stared at Alexander, trying to process what he'd just said. That's not fair, she whispered. You can't just say that. We're from completely different worlds. This thing between us, whatever it is, it can't work. You're a billionaire and I'm just someone you felt sorry for. You're not just anything, Alexander said, and now his voice was soft, almost broken. You're the woman who saw my daughter suffering and didn't hesitate to help. You're the mother who works 3 jobs to give her son a good life. You're the person who makes music that heals people. You're Maya, and I've never met anyone like you. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. I can't accept this. I can't accept you creating jobs for me and giving me money and saying these things. It's too much. It's all too much. Then quit, Alexander said simply. Quit the job. I'll help you find something else, somewhere else where I have nothing to do with it. But don't walk away because you're scared. Don't walk away because you think you don't deserve good things. How do you know I'm scared? Because I'm scared too, Alexander said. I'm terrified. I haven't felt anything for anyone since Catherine died. I thought that part of me died with her. But then you came along and you made me feel alive again. You made Lily feel alive again. And yes, I have money and I used it to try to help you. But that doesn't make what I feel any less real. Maya wiped her eyes, trying to think clearly. This was too much, too fast, too complicated. She wanted to run away, to protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak that would come when Alexander realized she didn't fit into his world. But she also wanted to stay. Maya didn't quit, but she didn't accept Alexander's confession either. Instead, she did something that surprised both of them. She asked for space. I need to figure out if I'm good at this job because of me or because of you, she told him the next day. And I need to do it without you watching over my shoulder. Alexander looked like she'd slapped him, but he nodded. Okay, whatever you need. For 6 weeks, Maya threw herself into her work at the foundation. She arrived early and stayed late. She developed new programs, reached out to schools in struggling neighborhoods, and built partnerships with therapists and counselors. She wrote curriculum and trained volunteers. She poured everything she had into proving, maybe to herself more than anyone else, that she belonged there. The programs exploded in popularity. Within a month, Maya had a waiting list of over 100 children wanting to participate. The foundation's board was thrilled. Local news stations started covering her work. Maya was invited to speak at education conferences about music therapy and childhood trauma, and she did it all without Alexander's help. He kept his distance like she'd asked, though she'd sometimes catch glimpses of him in the building. He never interrupted her work, never offered advice she didn't ask for. He just let her fly on her own, but she missed him. She hated admitting it, but she did. She missed their Saturday park days with the kids. She missed his quiet presence. She missed the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Daniel missed Lily too. He asked about her constantly, wondering why they didn't have playdates anymore. One evening, about 2 months after their confrontation, Maya was working late at the foundation when Rebecca knocked on her office door. Do you have a minute? Rebecca asked. Maya gestured to the empty chair across from her desk. Rebecca sat down with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. I need to tell you something, Rebecca said. And Alexander doesn't know I'm telling you this, so please don't mention it. Maya's stomach tightened. Okay. When we interviewed you for this position, I told you it had been under development for several months. That was true. But what I didn't tell you was that we'd already interviewed 15 other candidates before you. All of them had master's degrees in music therapy. Years of formal training. Impressive resumes. Maya felt her heart sinking. Here it was. The confirmation that she'd only gotten this job because of Alexander. We rejected all of them, Rebecca continued, because none of them had what you have. That ability to really see people, to meet them where they are. The board voted unanimously to offer you the position after your interview, and Alexander wasn't even in that meeting. He'd specifically recused himself from the hiring decision because of his friendship with you. Maya stared at her. What? You got this job because you're extraordinary at it, Rebecca said firmly. Yes, Alexander advocated for creating the position. But you earned your place here all on your own. I thought you should know that. After Rebecca left, Maya sat in her office for a long time, staring at the walls covered in drawings from the kids she worked with. Pictures of pianos and musical notes and smiling faces. Thank you cards from parents whose children were sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Emails from therapists saying her work was making a real difference. She'd been so afraid of being someone's charity case that she'd almost missed the truth. She was good at this. Really good at this. And maybe it didn't matter how the opportunity came to her. Maybe what mattered was what she did with it. Maya pulled out her phone and stared at Alexander's number for a full minute before finally calling. He answered on the first ring. Maya, can we talk? They met at the same park where they'd had those Saturday playdates, but this time, it was just the two of them. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Alexander was already there when Maya arrived, sitting on a bench and looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. "Thank you for meeting me," Maya said, sitting down beside him but leaving space between them. "Always," Alexander said quietly. "I talked to Rebecca," Maya began. "She told me about the hiring process, about how you recused yourself from the decision." Alexander nodded. "I didn't want my involvement to influence anything. I wanted them to choose you because you were the right person, not because I asked them to." "Why didn't you tell me that?" "Would you have believed me?" Alexander asked. "You were so convinced that everything I did was about pity or guilt. I thought if I just gave you space, you'd figure out on your own that you earned this." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I've been so stupid." "No, you haven't. You were protecting yourself. I understand that. I've spent my whole life being told I'm not enough," Maya said, her voice breaking. "Not smart enough because I didn't finish college. Not successful enough because I work hourly jobs. Not good enough because I'm a single mom who struggles to pay rent. And then you came along with all your money and your generosity, and some part of me just couldn't believe you saw me as anything other than a charity case." Alexander shifted closer to her on the bench. "Maya, look at me." She turned to face him, and the intensity in his eyes took her breath away. "You are enough," he said. "You've always been enough. You're one of the strongest, most capable, most incredible people I've ever met. Yes, I have money, but you have something I could never buy. You have this ability to make people feel seen and safe and valued. You saved my daughter with a song. You're saving dozens of kids every week with your programs. You raised an amazing son while working yourself to exhaustion. Don't you dare tell me you're not enough." A tear rolled down Maya's cheek. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared that we're too different. That your world and my world don't fit together. That eventually you'll realize I don't belong there." "My world is just buildings and bank accounts," Alexander said. "That's not a real world. You know what a real world is? It's Saturday mornings at the park watching our kids play together. It's the way you light up when you talk about music. It's Daniel asking me if I know how to play video games and then patiently teaching me like I'm the kid and he's the adult. That's real. That's what matters." "What if it doesn't work?" Maya asked. "What if we try this and it falls apart and the kids get hurt?" "What if it does work?" Alexander countered. "What if we're both too scared to try and we miss out on something that could be amazing?" Maya was quiet for a long moment watching the sunset. Then she said, "Daniel's been asking about Lily nonstop. I think he's a little bit in love with her, in that innocent 6-year-old way." Alexander smiled. "Lily talks about Daniel constantly. She made him a drawing for every single day you've been avoiding me. I have a stack of about 40 pictures at home." "I wasn't avoiding you," Maya protested, then stopped. "Okay, I was totally avoiding you. I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just tell me what you want," Alexander said. "Because I know what I want. I want you in my life. I want Daniel and Lily to keep being friends. I want to take you to dinner and learn everything about you. I want to show up at your concerts and cheer louder than anyone else. I want to build something real with you. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because you make me want to be better. But only if that's what you want too." Maya thought about everything that had happened since that night in the food court. The panic attack. The envelope under her door. The job offer. All of it had felt like things happening to her. Like she was just receiving gifts she didn't earn. But maybe she'd been looking at it wrong. Maybe these weren't gifts at all. Maybe they were just doors opening and she was the one who chose to walk through them. "I want that too," Maya said finally. "I'm still scared. But I want to try." Alexander's whole face lit up. Yeah, but we take it slow. Real dates.
Getting to know each other.
No more grand gestures or anonymous envelopes under doors. Just two people figuring out if they fit together. "I can do slow," Alexander said, though his smile suggested slow might be difficult for him. "And one more thing," Maya added. "Tomorrow is Saturday. Daniel and I would like to have you and Lily over for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just spaghetti and garlic bread at my apartment. My real apartment where we actually live." "You want me to see where you live?" Alexander asked carefully. "I want you to see my real life," Maya said. "Not the version of me that exists in your foundation building or at fancy parks. The real me. The me that lives in a tiny apartment and shops at discount stores and sometimes burns the garlic bread. If we're doing this, you need to see all of it." Alexander took her hand and Maya let him. His hand was warm and solid, and holding it felt right in a way she hadn't expected. "I would love to have spaghetti at your apartment," he said. burnt garlic bread and all. The next evening, Alexander and Lily showed up at Maya's apartment with flowers and a bottle of wine and zero judgment about the peeling wallpaper or the second-hand furniture. Lily and Daniel were reunited with shrieks of joy that probably annoyed the neighbors. They spent the evening eating slightly burnt spaghetti and laughing at Daniel's stories and playing board games on Maya's coffee table. And somewhere between dessert and bedtime, Maya realized something. This felt like family. Not perfect, not fancy, just real and warm and right. 6 months later, Maya stood on a stage at the city's Performing Arts Center. The foundation was hosting its first annual fundraiser, and she'd been asked to perform. The room was filled with hundreds of people, including many of the children and families she'd worked with. She sat at the grand piano and looked out at the audience. Alexander was in the front row with both kids, Daniel on one side and Lily on the other. All three of them were grinning at her like she was about to do something magical. Maya began to play. Not the song from that night in the food court, though that one would always be special. This was something new, something she'd composed herself. She called it The Lullaby That Found Us, and it told the story of two broken families that became whole together. As her fingers moved across the keys, Maya thought about how one moment of kindness had changed everything. How a simple song played for a scared little girl had led to all of this. Love and family and purpose and belonging. When the final notes faded, the room erupted in applause. But Maya only had eyes for her family, the one she'd found when she wasn't even looking. Alexander was crying, not even trying to hide it. The kids were clapping so hard their hands had to hurt. And Maya knew, sitting at that piano with her heart full and her future bright, that sometimes the best melodies in life aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that find you in food courts and park benches and tiny apartments where the garlic bread burns. They're the ones you create together, one note at a time, until suddenly you're playing a symphony you never knew you needed. Some songs are meant to be played solo, but the best ones, Maya had learned, are always duets.